Yo, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports. Game number 12, the final preview video of the 2023 regular season for the West Virginia Mountaineers. And it pits the Mountaineers on the road at 7-4, 5-3 in Big 12 play, at the Baylor Bears, who are a lowly 3-8, 2-6 in Big 12 play. The Mountaineers tied for 5th in the Big 12 standings. Meanwhile, the Bears down at the bottom of the conference in 13th place, just ahead of lowly Cincinnati, who the Mountaineers defeated last week at home at Milan Puskar Stadium. A 7 p.m. kickoff from McLean Stadium in Waco, Texas on FS1. And right now, if you care what happens in Vegas, the betting odds for this one, West Virginia favored by 11.5 points. Once again, another double-digit, West Virginia only, I think, a 5.5 point favorite last week against Cincinnati. Haven't been double-digit favorites too frequently this season, but just for, I think, the second or third time, a double-digit favorite. Over-under set at 54.5, and the ESPN matchup predictor has West Virginia at a probability of 72%. So, as I like to do at this point in time in the now 10, 11 games into the regular season, we got to talk about what's on the line for both teams. Unfortunately, starting it off like this doesn't really work too well when the last couple of weeks there really hasn't been much to play for the two opponents West Virginia's played. But anyway, what's on the line for the Mountaineers? West Virginia, with this win, most importantly, reaches its goal, in my opinion. I've been saying this narrative since July, August, that West Virginia's internally set goal was winning 8 games, so West Virginia would get there. And wasn't a goal, that is a big goal to really achieve. For only the third time that West Virginia would achieve 8 wins as members of the Big 12 Conference and playing a Big 12 schedule. I know it's a lot different. It's not the same. It's not your granddad's old Big 12 Conference of 10 years ago, but still, to get to 8 wins, I think is a measuring stick for this program that was only projected to win like 3 games by most national pundits. I think it's also improves West Virginia's favorable odds for getting a better bowl game. I think that this also just is one step closer for Neil Brown, firmly securing his place with keeping his job for this upcoming season, to save his tenure in Morgantown, to get to 8 wins, to prove something that West Virginia could do it and get there and win on the road. And the other thing is West Virginia, and this is a great opponent to close out the regular season with that 8 win, because West Virginia, over the course of history, and we'll look at the matchup history in here in just a second, but West Virginia has not done well in Waco. Done great in Morgantown, don't get me wrong, and been at many of those contests, but in Waco, only having 1 win in matchup history, and that was a close Thursday or Friday night contest. I can't remember exactly the day in 2017. If it wasn't for Will Greer, West Virginia wouldn't have won that game. So to beat this opponent who really has mailed it in, I feel like over the last few weeks since not achieving bowl eligibility for the season, not really much to play for Baylor. And to take just a quick second and talk about the job security of head coach Dave Aranda at Baylor. I know this has come up in question a lot on the message boards and social media and online of the fans are not happy in Waco, and with good reason. For the first time ever in school history, Baylor had 8 home games in 2023. 8. So to talk about the lost revenue from those 8 home games that have gone because of this porous Baylor schedule, just turnout of a year, that's bad. You can't have eight home games on your schedule and go 3-8. So I know that he just 2 years ago, after Baylor won 10 games in 2021, signed a big extension that goes through the 2029 season, so I'm sure he has a similar, if not higher, buyout than Neil Brown. That's not publicly disclosed information because Baylor's a private school, but so we don't know the financial terms of that deal. But my guess is to say is that it would be a double digit in the millions for Baylor to go and fire Dave Aranda. And do you really want to do that? I know that someone's got, some people, maybe just more than just one, have to pay for the way that this season's gone and face some consequences, but do you really want to do that and spend that kind of money to send Dave Aranda away? Maybe not. I guess we'll find out by the end of the weekend, and who then could potentially Baylor go and get on the open market. So they're not really playing for anything today. They're playing for pride, and with their starting quarterback being injured, they're just trying to show that they can rebuild to start into 2024. So ripe for the taking for the Mountaineers to go and break the will of a team who doesn't really have anything to play for. And taking a look at the matchup history, this has been a good one. I said a few years ago, I think it was in either 2020 or 2019 when I was still writing for WVNation.com, which is now West Virginia Sports Illustrated, and those are great guys over there, so take a look at their articles on the regular. I said that I thought that Baylor was an up-and-coming rival for West Virginia in the Big 12 Conference, that West Virginia really still hasn't firmly established any type of Big 12 rivalry so far, again, because of the geographic differences, the cultural differences, not having any history to go off on like you do with Pitt and Penn State and Virginia Tech and all of those Eastern schools that West Virginia has played against, Syracuse, Maryland. But this has been a fun matchup, and I was there on the very first one back in 2012. West Virginia defeated the Bears 70-63 in that electric environment at Milan Puskar Stadium, sold-out crowd in which Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey, and those cast of characters on offense. And then for Baylor, Nick Florence with Terrence Williams and so many others put on an offensive show. Still one of the highest scoring regular season games in college football history that did not go to overtime. And then, the very next year, West Virginia really struggling, Baylor took advantage of it, 73-42. Came back in 2014. Baylor now ranked top 5 in the country. They may be arguably the biggest win of the Dana Holgorsen era. West Virginia defeated Baylor, not just close, 41-27 by 2 touchdowns, as the people like to say on Twitter. West Virginia came up with a victory. Then Baylor once again countered back and pummeled the Mountaineers in 2015, 62-38. Came back home in 2016. Won a hard-fought game, 24-21. In 2017, that matchup in Waco, which I just talked about with Will Greer, right before Halloween, Baylor having a bit of a down year per se. West Virginia goes on the road and wins a close one, 38-36. It went down to the final wire. Came back home. Greer and the boys, a Thursday night contest, just lit up Baylor, 58-14 in that one, just an offensive clinic. Then in 2019, it was a game that went down to the wire, that a kick return by Winston Wright. You may remember this. This was Neil Brown's first season in 2019. Again, Baylor was nationally ranked, I think, 11th or 12th in the country at that point in time. Came up with some the Stills brothers played incredible. That defense played incredible. Just couldn't get anything from that offense led by Jared Deggy and Austin Kendall. Instead, Baylor walked out with just a close 17-14 victory. In 2020, another epic clash. Went to double overtime in a game that you thought West Virginia had in regulation, but just really washed away. But thanks to a Tyke Smith interception in the end zone in double overtime, West Virginia came out victorious, 27-21. In 2021, it was all Baylor, and this was really the darkest day there were a few in 2021 really for West Virginia, and ending in that terrible guaranteed rate bowl game loss to Minnesota. But this was which nailed West Virginia into a 2-4 record at the midway point of the 2021 season, and Baylor just crushed West Virginia 45-20. West Virginia came home last year against Baylor, its third Thursday night game before Halloween. Went and attended this game in person, saw it, led by JT Daniels, and it was another great offensive showing. Tony Mathis paving the way and the running back position for an injured C.J. Donaldson. He played phenomenally, and West Virginia just eked it out with a 43-40 win. That was another crazy one. Forced fumble by Sean Martin, picked up by Jazir Cox, and ran it back. That was a game-changing play in the second quarter when Baylor was just crushing West Virginia down the field with an offensive clinic. So taking a look at the Bears, now we've looked at the matchup history. It's just been a weird season for Baylor. As I said, had those 8 home games to start out the year. First and foremost, I think we should have figured, the national pundits are wrong on Baylor, and I have no idea why they were so high on the Mountaineers, or so high on the Bears, so low on the Mountaineers, when West Virginia had a 5-7 season, just like Baylor did this past year, and Baylor didn't make any giant splashes in the transfer portal, and they like Texas or Oklahoma had over these last couple of years, and there was just so much more. I feel like coming back for West Virginia that I don't know, and that's another thing for West Virginia to play this 3-8 opponent is I just want to take the time to spend these couple of minutes to talk about this. Is like, who cares at this point in time that you're playing such a terrible team? If you want to put it in the context of Neil Brown's job. And, like, how do you evaluate Neil Brown whenever he's playing lowly opponents like a Cincinnati, like a Baylor versus some good teams? I know that's a fair criticism of, can you more justly evaluate Neil Brown and his staff when West Virginia is playing in Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, or Kansas State, who West Virginia hasn't played so far this year, versus Baylor? But here's the thing, and I've been watching a lot of college football this year, is there are a lot of bad teams out there, and then there are some just above average teams who are taking advantage of those bad teams and putting together double-digit win records. Like, look at Iowa. Freaking Iowa is 10-2 on the season, and Penn State, I know, has already beaten West Virginia, so I don't want to talk any smack against West Virginia for Penn State beating them, or put it in a perspective of oh, well, what are you saying about West Virginia by not being able to beat Penn State? But it's like Penn State's just feasted on a lowly Big Ten schedule. I'm really talking smack, I feel like, on the whole Big Ten. The Big Ten's been the worst conference you have of the Power 5 this year. You have 3 teams who I feel like are any good in Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. But Iowa has a god-awful offense. Just lost their best player on their defense, but because the Big Ten, especially the West Division, is so bad, they're just feasting on it. So that's what I mean. And how many times have we said, oh, well, if West Virginia was just in the ACC like Pitt, how many division and then conference championships would it have over the last 10 years? So you can only play who you can play. I think it's a fair criticism to say that these 4 new teams to the Big 12 Conference, and BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati have been low-quality additions. And that's even fair. That's fair to say. And what even is their ceiling in this new Big 12 conference, especially when you add over Colorado, Utah, and the 2 Arizona schools? That is their ceiling really capped? Will we ever see Houston win this conference? Will we? And then there are some teams who I feel like Baylor's in this same kind of mold, that are trying to mark their identity, who have had their heydays, but then they've had some high highs with Art Briles and Matt Rule, and then they've had some and even Dave Aranda, and then they've had some really low lows. It's a team like Baylor that just really ebbs and flows dramatically compared to some of these other members of the conference. So I'm not going to hold it against West Virginia for going out there and punishing Baylor, because, as I said in my last video against Cincinnati, no one feels bad from a national or Big 12 perspective, feels bad about either beating West Virginia or not giving them any sort of national respect. So you have to go out there and own it. So whenever you play good teams, you play them the same way as you play bad teams, and you go out there and your goal is to score points, and score points at will. So back to Baylor. I know I took a couple of minutes to get on my soapbox about that, but it had to be said that I'm just sick of the narrative around this 2023 season. We can evaluate it, and we will after this week, because there's no conference championship game, so we will evaluate it, and I'll be very fair and I'll be very critical. And I think you all will like that video. But for now, West Virginia plays the teams that it plays on its schedule. Baylor's one of them, and it's a bad Baylor team. So, as I said, there was an omen, I feel like, at the beginning of the season when Baylor lost to Texas State 42-31. Then they played a nationally ranked Utah team who's proved to be like right on the cusp of being ranked, but because they don't have Cam Rising at quarterback, it's kind of dropped their ceiling of what this team could be. But they're still 7-4, just like West Virginia is on the season. So that would be an interesting matchup come bowl season with Utah. 20-13. That was a close loss. Came home for the third week in a row at home against Long Island, LIU Brooklyn, who West Virginia played a few years ago in non-conference play. Only beat them 30-7. Then played Texas and got smacked. All 4 straight home games, and you go 1-3. Oof, that's bad. Went on the road, took on UCF, and we remember that game. UCF was up double digits. Baylor made a miraculous comeback to win on a walk-off kick, 36-35, and then came back home against Texas Tech and got crushed, 39-14. Beat Cincinnati at Nippert Stadium 32-29. We saw how good last week Cincinnati is, which is not very good. Came back home, got smacked against Iowa State 30-18. Once again at home, got beat in overtime by Houston 25-24. Went on the road, suffered arguably their worst defeat of the year at Bill Snyder Family Football Stadium 59-25. That was just a couple of weeks ago. And then last week played TCU on the road, and it was 42-17. And this is where I want to pause and kind of talk about this game a little bit, because I went back and watched the highlights, and it was like right into the first minute of the fourth quarter, and it was still a 28-17 game with Baylor having the ball right around midfield. But unfortunately for Baylor, just didn't get a fourth down conversion whenever it needed to on a 4th and 11 at midfield. Very next drive, TCU takes over with a short field, 8 plays right down the field, and scores to go up 35-17. Now you're up 3 scores at that point with just 10 minutes to play. You got to put it into overdrive. You got to score. Unfortunately for Baylor, they went 3 and out, turned the ball over on their own 31-yard line. Very next play for TCU, Imani Bailey rush off the right for 31 yards for a touchdown, and that proves to be your final score for that one, 42-17. And maybe arguably the most unfortunate thing, not only in addition to the loss, is 5 minutes and 24 seconds, you're trying to make a play. Your redshirt junior quarterback, Blake Shapen, who we saw in Morgantown and how well he played last year against the Mountaineers, takes a hard shot, tried to Jamoy Hodge from TCU, just crushed Shapen on this throw down to Monterey Baldwin trying to make a play. He gets knocked out of the contest, and he's not going to play today against West Virginia. So all of that, and not only in a blowout loss, but you lose your quarterback. So really the worst of all kinds of situations for Baylor. So it's been a rough season, as I've just chronicled. So let's take a look at what is this Baylor Bears team at this point in the season, and kind of where's it gone right, and where do they still have some playmakers, and who should we expect to see in this one. And there's just like a big question mark that I really want to know. But I'll pause there for a second. We got to talk about the quarterback. So Sawyer Robertson, who's already played in 5 contests for the Bears so far this season, with Shapen being out for various injuries, and as I said, not going to play in this one. So hold on, sorry, got a dog. Oh, got to take a dog break. Just absolutely barking at nothing. So sorry about that. Come back on camera. You get your first of many things for the year when you talk about hold on one second. Sorry about that. Sorry for that inconvenience there with my dog who saw a cat out the window and decided she was going to go crazy after it. So I had to let her out and go finish that. But talking about this Baylor offense, I'll come back to it. 13th in the Big 12 Conference in scoring offense at just 22 points per game. Meanwhile, if we take a look at the West Virginia defense, have jumped back up to 9th in scoring defense in the conference at 27 points per game allowed. So when you talk about this Baylor offense, really what you can talk about most, I feel like, is passing, which was led by Shapen, but they're not scoring points. That's the thing. You can be a high-flying offense, and that's what they are, is they pass the ball a lot for the season, averaging 267 yards per game through the air, but they have the fewest amount of passing touchdowns, with just 14 on the season, and have turned the ball over 7 times through the air. And with 8 fumbles, they have 2 more fumbles on the season than West Virginia does. You would think to yourself, like, West Virginia doesn't have that many fumbles that you can remember for the year, especially ones that have proved to be consequential, especially by the offense. But Baylor has 15 turnovers to its example. So they're moving the ball through the air, not really resulting in any points. And then one of the things that you're really confused about with Baylor is its rushing attack, which is second worst in the Big 12 Conference and one of the worst rushing offenses in the country at just 114 yards per game. So Baylor not running the ball as we're used to with them. And one guy who I want to focus on, who's just been a complete question mark, not really necessarily due to injury, but has really been phased out of this offense, or at least seen kind of a demotion, I would say, is running back Richard Reese, who was a freshman All-American this past season, and then coming into this year was an All-Conference running back on the All Big 12 list at the beginning of the season. So he's only had 60 carries for 264 yards and just 2 touchdowns on the year. He's kind of relinquished the starting running back role, and I know he was just really kind of like the lead back out of a triumvirate that Baylor always deploys multiple backs, similarly to the way West Virginia does. But taking a look at the Baylor run game, we're going to see number 21, Dominic Richardson, and number 35, Dawson Pendergrass, who have 115 for Richardson, 115 yards, 494 yards, no touchdowns, and then for Pendergrass, 74 carries for 322 yards and 5 touchdowns. So we might see Reese get into the ball game, but I wonder if he's one of these frustrated, disgruntled players who's just waiting for this game to be over so he can hit the transfer portal come Monday and find his new home, and he's upset. So I wonder how many of these Baylor players, to be honest with you, is that's what they're thinking about, is how soon is Monday to get to the transfer portal. Or, yeah, actually it's the following Monday. So not this upcoming Monday, but the following Monday, sorry. But talking about the quarterback position, Blake Shapen, a guy who I was very high on preseason, again, seeing him in person in Morgantown this past season, really impressed how he was able to move the ball methodically down the field. And had it not been for Andrew Wilson Lamp, I feel like knocking out Shapen on a quarterback slide, who I'm sure he wanted to take advantage of West Virginia. That play really, I feel like, has changed the trajectory of Shapen's career in college, in a similar way that, like, West Virginia knocked out Tyler Shuck from Texas Tech earlier this season, giving him a season-ending injury in just, week 3, week 4. Instead, West Virginia, knocking him out. Now he's transferring out of Lubbock. Same thing with Shapen. He's just dealt with multiple injuries, multiple concussions. Another one this past week against TCU, so we're not going to get to see him today. Not the greatest of years by Shapen, but still, like I said, averaging around 275 yards passing per game. He methodically moves this Baylor offense. He is the straw that stirs the drink that is the Baylor's offense. Instead, we're going to see Sawyer Robertson. 5 games played at the quarterback position, just 49 completions on 98 attempts, with 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions, and really doesn't add much from the running game that you would get occasionally with Shapen, a guy who could be able to escape the pocket a little bit if he had to. We'll see what Robertson can do. Does have more years net on the season, 20 carries for just 36 yards, and he does have a rushing touchdown, so we'll see what he can do. One thing that I do like out of the Baylor receiving game is Monterey Baldwin. really talented receiver, not very big, but he plays big. He has pretty, he's long, he can get the ball away from his body. He just really a good athlete out there. He can contort his body in ways in which he can catch the ball over the sideline and still touch the ground to keep his feet in bounds. Does most of his work out of the slot. 38 catches for 623 yards on the season with 4 touchdowns. And then they have two big-bodied tight ends that I want to talk about. Drake Dabney with 31 catches. He's Baylor's second leading receiver at 529 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season. And then Jake Roberts with 22 catches for 194 yards and a touchdown as well. So Pendergrass will catch the ball. Hal Presley and Ketron Jackson Jr. also do some receiving. So you see, just like we've seen out of many Big 12 offenses, is they like to spread the wealth around, but they're really two main guys that we've seen so far this year. Baldwin is who Shapen would go to in crunch time situations, and he's the guy that Baylor threw to on both fourth down attempts that Baylor did not get last week against TCU, and then Dabney. So very interesting to see. That's been a dynamic that West Virginia hasn't had to deal with too much, is covering tight ends. Tight ends not hugely used in this conference in the past game. I mean, they have been historically in the past, but you just can't think this year of a tight end that West Virginia's played that's really tore him up. Austin Stogner did get more involved in that Oklahoma game than he had been all season. Jared Wiley out of TCU, West Virginia held in check. The tight end whose name really escapes me from Oklahoma State. And that, but I want to see, how does West Virginia cover the tight end? Is it more Lee Koba? Is it more Aubrey Burks? If they use him more, out into the slot than in tight, how does that work? I want to see how West Virginia covers Baylor's tight end. And then is it Baldwin versus Beanie Bishop Jr.? And that'll be another awesome to match up to see how those two go against each other. Or will Malachi Ruffin play over top of him, or is he more on Hal Presley? Let's see how West Virginia's defense does against a Baylor offense that really likes to do a lot of play action. It is an RPO style type of offense, like all these offenses are in the Big 12 conference, but a lot of them that are fakes to the back, roll out the opposite way, and Shapen does that masterfully. Can West Virginia not get faked on that rush on the fakes and cover the ground game well? Because as I mentioned, they are not a good running team, and still get pressure on the quarterback and get after him. And that's one of my 3 keys to victory, to kind of give you a heads up for that one. So Baylor not putting the ball in the end zone, not particularly stout on third down either, just converting on about 30%, 36% of their, let me get the exact total for you. Conversions, 36% of their conversions are a little bit better on fourth down. But as I said, lost 8 fumbles this year. They don't give up a lot of sacks, but 18 on the season. They get the ball out quickly. So that's the thing. If West Virginia can come up with some tackles for loss, come up with some sacks, that's some awesome style points to add against this Baylor team that likes to get the ball out quickly and nickel and dime you down the field. So then whenever you get lulled to sleep with those short passes, bam, they try and hit you down the field. But again, haven't scored that many points. So then let's take a look at what West Virginia has on it when it has the ball. And oh my goodness, what can you say more about this rushing attack? Wow. Now, number 4 in the country, number 2 among Power 5 teams. And the only other team that's running the ball better in the Power 5 than West Virginia is their old friend down in Orlando and UCF. And we saw how high-powered that running back tandem with R.J. Harvey and Xavier Richardson were for this offense, adding in Plumlee, who's adding more to their run game as he gets better and healthier after his leg injury midway through the season. But this West Virginia rushing attack has been awesome, scoring points or running the ball at will against opponents. Let's take a look at the numbers. 233 yards per game on the ground. Fantastic. I said at the preseason that West Virginia should average 200 yards rushing by the end of the season, and they're well over that by now. getting close to one of the best rushing offenses of the last 20 years for this program. And it goes through 3 players at this point in time. C.J. Donaldson, who has 166 carries for 775 yards and 11 touchdowns. He's the battering ram. He is Grand. He just muscles his way into the end zone. Saw this last week on just 5 carries. So don't know how much he'll be used. Might be used more in a complementary role to Jaheim White out of the backfield, because he did suffer an injury in that Oklahoma game just a couple weeks ago. So wanting to keep him fresh, wanting to keep him healthy. Practiced on a limited basis this week in Morgantown. So maybe if you give him this game and just another few carries, come back for the bowl game, he'll be able to run all over whoever West Virginia plays in that contest. So that's C.J. Donaldson's year. I don't think he'll necessarily reach 200 carries by the end of this game. That'd be crazy to me if he took 34 or more carries for the season, but he might get to 200 in 2 more games. So we'll see what happens. Jaheim White, the player of the week, getting national and conference awards this past week for his epic performance against Cincinnati, now grading out as the highest rated freshman player across the nation according to Pro Football Focus. Been phenomenal. 80 carries for 659 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. Did have that 75-yard touchdown reception, catch and run last week against Cincinnati. So he really does it all. Fantastic phenom freshman out of York, Pennsylvania. And then next to them, the redshirt junior quarterback Garrett Green with 97 carries on the year for 605 yards and 11 touchdowns, leading the conference by rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. So it's a 3-headed dynamic. Might see some Justin Johnson, may see some Jalen Anderson at some points in time, depending upon the game flow. But that's how West Virginia deploys its backs, and it's going to run all over this Baylor team, who really isn't all that stout defensively. Last in sacks, sacks 4 out of the Big 12 conference. Let me just get the numbers for you. Sorry, all my notes. West Virginia's given up the fewest sacks. Meanwhile, Baylor's taken the most sacks out of any team in the conference. So that's where my style points notes comes for West Virginia's defense in this one. Baylor gets the fewest interceptions out of any defense in the conference, and Baylor also has the second fewest sacks for the season, with just 18 on the season. Meanwhile, West Virginia's had 23. So this isn't a defense that's going to dictate any sort of terms. They give up 33 points per game on average. Meanwhile, West Virginia's increased its per game average to 31 points per game on the season. Like to see West Virginia maybe chop that up to 33 by season's end. That was my preseason prediction. West Virginia would get up to 33 points per game offensively, defensively hold opponents to 27. So I'm right there on my preseason predictions, and I think they could get there by game's end. So what I'm looking for in this contest, they'll obviously be running the ball at will. I think they'll do that with some big play. Just like really, the game plan doesn't change all that much from Cincinnati. I think you go out there and you try and torch them through the air. Pass sets up the run, like we've seen. Whenever Garrett Green feels the need to take off and go run, he goes and does it. He's a jitterbug out there running all over opponents. He'll do that, and then just see how these who has the hot hand receiving. Devin Carter had a big catch in last week's contest, just one though, unfortunately. 27 catches for 501 yards on the season and 2 touchdowns. Leading receiver is West Virginia's tight end, and Cole Taylor with 29 catches, 347 yards. Did have a touchdown catch last week against Cincinnati with 4 touchdowns on the season. Preston Fox, we chronicled how great of a redshirt junior year he's had for the boys in Old Gold and Blue. 23 catches, 317 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Hudson Clement been quiet since his return back from injury. Just 13 catches for the year, but 311 yards and 4 touchdowns. E.J. Horton, Traylon Ray also getting involved. So right there's 5-6 pass catchers for West Virginia to use in multiple varieties, with Garrett Green at the helm at quarterback. So torch them through the air to set up the run. You'll be able to dictate terms. There's nothing really that this Baylor defense can do against you that I'm really necessarily all that concerned about. Looking at their defense, the guy who's going to make a lot of the tackles for them is number 2, their redshirt senior linebacker, Matt Jones from Odessa Permian. Played with Boobie Miles out there in West Texas. 74 tackles with 10 for a loss for this season, 3 sacks and 5 pass breakups. Devin Bobby, a sophomore safety, second leading tackler on the team at 67, and also has 4 pass breakups and 1 interception. Guy West Virginia could love to try and target in the transfer portal for recruiting is their freshman cornerback, Caden Jenkins. 33 tackles, but has 3 picks to lead the team and 3 pass breaks up on the season. They're 2 guys on the inside and outside linebacker and a defensive lineman, respectively. TJ Franklin, Byron Bonds are the second and third on the team in tackles for loss with 8 and 7 respectively. So it's Jones, Franklin, Vaughn's going to be the ones who try and get into the backfield and create havoc to get sacks. And meanwhile, on the back end, it'll be Bobby and Jenkins, who are the guys who are trying to get some stops through the air. So can West Virginia dictate terms, move the ball down the field? Can its offense score at will to the points that it's taking that pressure off that defense to, instead of having to play tight, go out there, play loosey-goosey, play the way they did against Cincinnati? Can West Virginia's defense get Baylor off the field in 3 plays or fewer? So before I get into that, which I just gave away all my keys to victory, taking a look at the special teams, where I want to call out for Baylor's team that's a little bit I would say in similar respects to West Virginia, Isaiah Hankins, their kicker, 17 for 22 on the season from field goals, so that's a 77% percentage. His misses have come from deeper range, 4 of 7 from 40 to 49, 2 of 3 from 50 plus, and is long on the air for 54. So he's a pretty decent kicker in the same respects that Michael Hayes is. Michael Hayes going through a bit of a slump, missed a kick again last week on the very first drive for the Mountaineers against Cincinnati. I know it was from over 50 yards, so one of his longer kicks of the year, and then again coming after that week last week of missing the kick against Oklahoma. So he's missed kicks in back-to-back weeks. Hopefully he can get back on track today. And then looking at the punting battle between Ollie Straw and Palmer Williams of Baylor. Williams having the edge over Straw in average punt distance, but Ollie Straw having the edge in the inside the 20 kicks. He has that dramatically over Williams, 17-6. And then Williams does have, so he's a bit of a longer kick punter, maybe not as finesse as Ollie Straw is. Not to say that Ollie Straw can't boot it, definitely can do so, but I think they're just a little bit different in that respects, that Williams has about a full 1.5 yards in his average distance over Straw. So 2 good punters in this contest between Williams and Straw in the punting game. And the kickoffs about equal in kickoff touchback percentage. So you'll see about the same. A lot of, a good bit of touchbacks, but nothing spectacular. And then I would say nothing too much. One punt return by Josh Cameron on the season that went for 70 yards but not a touchdown really inflated his punt per return average at 15.46 for the season on his 13 returns. So does have that ability to bring the ball back. So West Virginia's got to watch for him and has covered the punt well in the last few weeks since that BYU game that West Virginia was just, Neil Brown was still pissed about by the end of it. And then taking a look at the kickoff returns, Jordan Neighbors, Corey Gordon Jr., and Richard Reese, all having around 21 yards per return average on the kickoff with no touchdowns. Nothing really that they've taken for long gains on the year. So not really concerned there in the punt return or kick return for West Virginia in this contest, but I want to make note of it for you so that you can know about it. And then last week, Jaheim White getting involved on the kickoff returns, Preston Fox also being involved. Not a lot of kickoff returns, only 15 for the year for the good guys in old gold and blue. Fox doing the punt returning. So taking a look at our 3 keys to victory, and this is why I give them to you. is not all that different, honestly, from the Cincinnati contest. I would say getting those big plays offensively, Baylor is right for the taking for just taking long shots down the field on them and then running the ball at will. So I think the pass, setting up the run, keep them spread out, keep them guessing of what's coming, and with Jaheim White and Garrett Green in the backfield, you being able to torch them the way that West Virginia did against Cincinnati last week at home. I know that being on the road is a little bit of a different factor than playing at home, but the weather looks beautiful down there in Waco, Texas. And again, it's only a 45,000 seat stadium, so it's not like you're playing at Beaver Stadium. You're just going out there and you're playing ball. Last regular season game, can't hold anything back. And then defensively, like I said, get Baylor off the field on short fields, just frustrate Sawyer Robertson, and this will be my third point that kind of coincides with defensively. I think you got to win with some style points in this one, given that Baylor gives up the most sacks of any team in the Big 12 Conference. Get tackles for loss in the run game and get your sacks. Lee Koba, Mike Lockhart playing fantastic last week against Cincinnati. The one that Lockhart smacked on Emory Jones, which I still feel that in my bones a week later. That was such a big hit. So definitely frustrated Jones. I think that, if West Virginia can go out there, get a few sacks, get some style points, hold Baylor under 20 points per game, 20 points in this contest, it's a big win. And the other thing is, West Virginia, I felt like on a defensive standpoint, just took off their foot off the pedal. Just lost a little bit of focus at times defensively. Going back to that drive when West Virginia was up 21-7, gave up a few big plays, a couple of arm tackles on that one by Beanie Bishop and Raleigh Collins. Gave up a big play that ended up allowing Cincinnati to score. Made that game a little bit closer than you would have liked to. I know West Virginia left 10 points out on the field. Hayes missing the first drive field goal, and then Jaheim White whip kicking Cincinnati's Deshaun Pace for a 15-yard penalty, and then on the very next play, Garrett Green throws an interception down at the 2-yard line. So West Virginia left off about 6 to 10 points on Cincinnati and gave up an extra 7, I feel like, than they should have. So got to clean that up a little bit defensively. I'm looking in this secondary. It's a pass-heavy Baylor offense, so can this secondary make some plays, step up in many of Beanie Bishop, Malachi Ruffin's last regular season collegiate game out there? So for this week, and I'm bringing in a good friend, my new friend to the program, who is going to be, was a wonderful gift over this Thanksgiving holiday from my uncle down in Statesville, North Carolina's girlfriend, Margie Call. So really appreciate her for donating this for the show. A nice gift. So this is the all-knowing West Virginia Swami. So he has all of the answers. He knows what's going to happen in these contests. So we are going to consult the all-knowing Swami anytime we get to prediction time and see how the Swami predicts this way going out. Because just looking at the way I do my predictions on the season, I'm really no better than West Virginia's played out on the field. 7-4 this season in my predictions. Again, really the two that killed me were picking against West Virginia to win in TCU and Texas Tech, and picking for West Virginia in Houston and Oklahoma State. Wish I could have flip-flopped those going back and forth. But at the beginning of the season, and this is where I'm going to trust in the Swami's prediction, because I don't trust in my own prediction from this past summer of saying that, and I didn't know how this was going to play out, because, again, didn't know how good West Virginia would be by this point in the season, how bad Baylor would be at this point in the season. So my preseason predictions, I picked Baylor to win this game. West Virginia not traditionally being that great of a road team in conference play, so figured the Bears would pull this one out on their senior day. So instead, I'm going to say it's going to be a big win, and this is what the Swami says. This is what the Swami told me. Swami told me he's cooking us something up, that the Mountaineers are going to pull out a big win, 42-17, to finish the season with 8 wins, get out of Waco with a victory, and then hopefully get to a really nice bowl game, maybe the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Florida, and play against an old traditional rival. So there you go. West Virginia is going to come out of this one victorious by multiple touchdowns, cover the spread, spread. All is going to be well. Even going to bet the over on this one because West Virginia is going to go out there and score points at will. 7 o'clock kickoff from Waco, Texas on FS1. I'm going to be tuning in. The Swami's going to be tuning in. Thanks for watching this show. If you like this video, please like it so that more fans can watch it across YouTube and share it on social media. If you like this program and others, take a look at some of the other videos on my channel. Had some interesting take earlier this week talking about the most important objective for West Virginia football for 2024, and that being retention, and which coming up in the next couple of weeks when the transfer portal opens up for this next football season, as well as recruiting, transfer recruiting. So take a look back at that video. Got over 2,000 views. I'm really excited. I'm really thankful. Or maybe just 1,000 views. Really appreciate all of you who have tuned in so far this whole regular season. It's really meant a lot to me. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. I'll be back tomorrow to recap it for you. We'll recap Baylor, West Virginia. Opportunity for West Virginia to not only get its 8th win for the season, just 2nd win in Waco in their past, now for this game, 12 matchups. So I'll be back tomorrow. Hail West Virginia. Let's go.